All right, folks, this is your Tulsi Gabbard. You are a fraud, F.R.A.U.D, Tulsi. Yeah, I know, you probably just turned it off and you're not going to listen to the rest of it. Well, you know what? That's your loss. Because there is an opportunity here for you, Tulsi, to decide that you're going to break with the stupidity of all the other Democrats that are on that stage and actually do something and maybe, just maybe, grab an 80% issue and win. I could go after you on the outrageous nonsense about so-called gun control. And in fact, I'm going to spend a little bit of time on that. Just a little bit. Anybody who has taken the oath of the military understands the true purpose of the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment does not exist to protect hunting deer. The Second Amendment does not necessarily exist to prevent other people from being able to break into your house and rape your wife at 3 o'clock in the morning or you can't do anything about it. And oh yes, you can call the cops and they'll come and collect your dead body. No, the Second Amendment exists for one reason, above all else. And it is the reason that people, ordinary people, have the right to so-called weapons of war. And the reason, and that includes, by the way, real assault weapons, not the ones that happen to look scary, but they're not really any different than any ordinary deer rifle. Why? Because it is only when the implicit threat of using those against the government exists that the government is deterred from doing things like screwing every single person in this country up the ass to the tune of $3 trillion a year. And that goes to where I'm going to spend the rest of the time on this podcast, and that is your insane, outrageous bullshit of Medicare for all. Medicare for all, huh? You mean the program that the AARP spent a whole bunch of money lobbying to make sure that the loopholes and the problems in Medicare were retained so they could sell their Medigap policies. They made themselves a couple of $1 billion over the space of 10 years. And oh, by the way, the majority of them, their income, comes from these policies and from these products. And what did they get exempted? Well, among other things, the medical efficiency ratio in those policies. Why? Because they essentially impose a 5% tax, a royalty fee, which would have made it very, very hard for any of these firms to sell these policies and stay compliant under ACA mandates. So they got exempted. And gee, do you think that that's the only distortion that pressure groups have put into the system over time? And I remind you, this is Medicare. This is the program that you say you want to extend to every single human being in the United States. It is a corrupt cesspool. The entire medical system in this country is a corrupt cesspool. It is a feloniously corrupt cesspool. Why do I say it's feloniously corrupt? Because 15 United States Code Chapter 1 is the law of the land, and it says quite explicitly that any attempt to fix prices, restrain trade, any attempt is a criminal felony. And if you do those things, you are supposed to go to the slam, where you will sit. But no, nobody goes to the slam for doing these things. And as a result, you get charged 500% roughly of what you should get charged in aggregate in the United States for so-called medical care. Explain to me why the Surgery Center of Oklahoma can do a list of procedures on their website and your local hospital costs 5 or 10 times as much for the exact same thing. Well, guess what? For openers, your hospital won't give you a price. The surgery center does. And how does the hospital go away with not giving you a price? Well, because you have allowed, you, Tulsi Gabbard, you pig, have allowed, along with the other clowns in Congress and the clowns on both sides of the aisle in the executive, whether it be Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, George Bush, and now Donald J. Trump. Hey, you guys have all sat around with your finger in your ass while the health system has screwed Americans out of $3 trillion a year despite the fact that there are laws on the books that say that this kind of conduct is a criminal felony. You cannot take your car in to have it fixed without having an estimate that is actually binding on the person who writes it before it goes on the rack. Why? Because years ago, car repair shops used to do the exact same thing to you that doctors do today. They would you'd say, well, my brakes are making a funny noise, and they'd put the car on the rack. They didn't give you a price. You say, well, fix it. The guy comes back and says, that'll be $2,200. What? Wait, what? Oh, by the way, you're not getting your car off the rack till you pay me. And what option did you have? The work had already been performed. So guess what? The laws say you can't do that stuff. That's fraud. It's consumer fraud. It is. And if you had car dealers and car repair shops that all got together and all agreed between them that they would not give you a price up front, people would actually go to jail because that's what the law says. That's what 15 United States Code Chapter 1 says. And that law has been around for more than 100 years. But, we have to talk about how we have to provide a insurance policy and the government has to underwrite it. Bullshit. Are there a few people in this country who, under a system of just competition, could not afford to pay for their own medical care? Well, I'm sure there are. There's a small percentage. And we've got ways to deal with that too. Why doesn't that become, after we fix the cost issues, Tulsi, afterwards, why doesn't that become a tax lien? That's an on-the-come bet that we would hope that person would become more prosperous in the future and they'd be able to pay it off. And if not, well, maybe they have some assets when they die, and through that process, they'd be able to pay it off. And if not, well, then I guess the American taxpayer eats it. Well, guess what? Right now, the American taxpayer eats it regardless of the reason. Secondly, why is it that I can go out to the store and I can buy box after box after box of donuts, garbage carbohydrates, garbage processed, machine processed vegetable oils, all of them which make me fat and sick? I can eat myself to death, literally. Why do you think Walmart has a line of power scooters? And then, after I've done this voluntarily, or even better, I can go to the liquor store and I can buy fifths of vodka and I can pour those down my gullet. Or I could shoot heroin and smoke crank. And after I've done all of these wonderful things and my teeth have all rotted out and I'm diabetic, I weigh 450 pounds, and I'm a heroin junkie, I can make someone else, through the force of government, pay for my medical bills. Stop with this compassion bullshit. It's not compassion. This has nothing to do with whether or not people have compassion for one another. What this has to do with is you want to protect a bunch of rapists. Oh, they're financial rapists, but rapists they are, and they take turns at Americans' buttholes every single day. And you, along with the rest of the Democrats, you not only like it, you support it, you want to expand it. I'm sorry, but that's bullshit. You want to use your pretty face and your pull of your gender and everything else in a way to actually make a difference? Then get up there and take an 80% issue. Yeah, an 80% issue. You know what? About 1/5 of Americans are quote-unquote employed, screwing the other 4/5 out of every penny they've got through this fraudulent system. So dismantle it through the existing legal framework that has been in place for over 100 years. It has been challenged twice, Tulsi. Royal Drug and Maricopa County, both times went all the way to the Supreme Court in the late 1970s and early 1980s, and the medical and pharmaceutical industries lost both times. Every one of these people who pull this crap should go to prison. Prison, period. Bang, slam, slam. How many of them do you have to lock up before this stops? The answer is one. The first one of these multimillionaires that gets perp walked and thrown right into the slammer for violations of 15 United States Code. You tear these hospital chains down and you tell them you're going to cut this out. You're going to provide a price. You're going to charge everybody the same price no matter how they pay. And if you collude between you in order to restrain trade, fix prices, or conceal costs, we're going to throw your ass in jail and you're going to stay there. And you know what? It'll go away immediately. Right now, I can get on an airplane right here, fly to Narita in Japan, get an MRI done, get on a plane, fly home for less than it cost me to have that scan done right down the street. That is criminal. We're not talking about some third world country here. The idea, and oh, by the way, 15 United States Code Chapter 1 applies to cross-border, that is, international price fixing. How is it that pharmaceutical companies can sell F.R.A.U.D in one country for $1,000 and in the United States for $70,000 or $40,000 or $50,000? Exactly how does that work? Where is the exemption in antitrust law? There isn't one. So where are the prosecutions? Don't give me this bullshit about how you can't fix this problem. You can fix this problem. We can solve it today. But you don't want to solve it, do you, Tulsi? Take your faux tears of, I care so much about the people. I am a Democrat. We have to raise the wage. Yeah, you have to raise the wage. So what? So I can give the $20,000 a year for myself, my wife, and my 2 kids to some health insurance company? Why does it cost $20,000? It costs $20,000 because instead of being $5,000 or $3,000, which I could pay out of my pocket, or just choose not to pay at all, and I will go ahead and I'll pay the $100 to go see the doctor. And if I need some medicine, I'll just pay cash. And boy, I could buy a catastrophic plan so that if my kid has some really terrible thing happen, it's very rare. Okay, a kid gets leukemia. It happens. Doesn't happen very often, but does happen. Guess what? That insurance would be dirt cheap. But no, you don't want to do that. We don't want to have people have choice. We don't want to actually solve problems. We want to put the government, the big government in there and say, oh, well, you're going to do this. Well, you take a look at what AARP did and the con job that they ran when the ACA was passed. The ACA is wonderful. Yeah, so you say. Guess what? I get solicitations from the AARP all the time for car insurance. Oh, we have vetted this. This is a great deal. The hell it is. Oh, yeah, sure, they'll sell me car insurance, but guess what? It's considerably more expensive than I can get by going out and bidding it on the open market. Now, why would I buy it from there? I would not. Well, guess what? What if you'd get the government in the middle of it and you basically force these distortions into the system? That's what you want to do. I will remind you, Tulsi, that by 2024, the federal government is going to try to spend enough money, over $2 trillion a year, between Medicare and Medicaid, and it doesn't have it. Between that, defense, and the interest payments on the debt, that is all of the revenue that the federal government takes in taxes. All of it, 100%. You haven't cut a single Social Security check yet. You haven't paid your salary. You haven't even paid the light bill. This is coming, and it is coming now. It is not something that's going to happen in another 20 or 30 years. You're young. You're going to be in the middle of this. The pitchforks and the torches are going to come out because civil society will break when you try to finance this on a continual basis and you and Trump or whoever else is in office attempts to ram that down the Federal Reserve's throats. And guess what? The cost of all the things you are mandating that people buy and that Medicare for all is going to come right back and boomerang right up your butt. So you decide. Tulsi, you can be the one that stands out, takes a look at the numbers, takes a look at the facts, and says, this is a real fix. This isn't the polemic bullshit that is run by people on both the left and the right, both of which are interested in doing nothing other than screwing the general public for the benefit of a handful of rich bastards that are all breaking the law. Or not. But you know what? If you want to actually become relevant, you need an 80% issue because you got 3% in the polls. How do you get out of that stinking little hole. Well, the first thing you do is you stop digging. And the second thing you do is you find an 80% issue. This is one. I'm happy to talk with you at any time and lay it out, facts and figures, if you don't feel like doing it in print. But if you do, already got it out there, I'm your ticker guy. And that's what needs to happen. So who's it going to be?